Hello and welcome back to the Making Bold Moves podcast. My name is Liz Boswell. I'm your host and founder of Bold Moves Coaching. This podcast is for women like you who are running their own business, winging it a lot of the time, but growing, learning. And what this podcast is all about is we want women to learn from each other. So this is about building a community here. So my guest today is a lady called Julia Kinsey, and I'm delighted to have Julia with me. Julia is a registered osteopath. She's from Penwortham in Lancashire, and she helps women in midlife to manage their health and proactively look after the body and manage pain because you know what, as women, we often put off, don't we, going to see somebody those little niggles that we put off for way too long until they get so bad. Back pain when we can't get out of bed. Julia, welcome. And I'm sure this is your daily life, isn't it?
Hello, Liz. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm really pleased to be here.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
it is one of the ways of our life that we sort of have so much to do, and sometimes we put our own needs very much on an in tray. It is in there somewhere, but it never seems to get to the top. It's always pushed back down by all the other things that we have to juggle in life. So yeah.
You're right. There's so many other things, isn't there, that often take priority. So really interested, Julia. Just share, please, if you can, with the listeners. How did you get into being an osteopath? Like, what was it that caused you to go into that line of work?
Right. Well, it was a long time ago, probably more years than I care to admit. I've been an osteopath for over 30 years, well, 33 to be exact.
Wow.
And I got into it. I'm from a medical background anyway. My father is a plastic surgeon, obviously retired now, and my mother was a midwife. And so I'd always been grown up with sort of healthcare, hospitals, and that sort of thing. I had a lot of moves in my childhood. As my father was working his way up the medical ladder, we moved from hospital to hospital so that he could further his own career. He was a specialist initially in hair, lip, and cleft palate. So as a child, I would sort of go with him round the hospitals, the children's wards, to say hello to the children at Christmas. And although that was a lovely thing to do, and it was an experience for me, I decided that I wanted to go into healthcare, but I didn't really want anything hospital based. I think I had
Yeah.
had enough of it.
How interesting. That must
Yeah.
have been
So,
fascinating childhood for you, I guess, to learn so much as well from your parents.
well, that's it about sort of the hospitals and the people coming and going and the sights and the smells and
Yeah,
so it was obviously experience that most children growing up wouldn't have, but yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
obviously, like 33 years. And how long did it take you to qualify to become an osteopath? How long does that take?
Well, it's when I trained, it was a 4-year full-time course at the British School of Osteopathy in London. And in that time, there was all the clinical practice, and they had a clinic, and people would come, from the general public and come in, knowing that they'd be treated by students, but under tutor supervision, of course. And then, so after the 4 years, I qualified with a diploma in osteopathy. It is now a degree in osteopathy, and
Oh,
the in 97 or 9, no, it's probably about 1990, I think. The school changed into to another venue, as much larger premises, much larger facilities and clinic space, and then it became degree course. So I missed it quite early.
mm,
Just a short time, I missed having the degree, but it didn't matter. I've made a full career of being an osteopath. I've been an osteopath my entire working life, although
yes.
I've done other courses to bring in other tools to help people. I've done nutrition courses. I'm not a trained nutritionist, but just to have those sort of building blocks to help me to help people.
Yes.
But I'm also trained in Nordic walking. the sort of pole walking that you might see people doing, and that is a great all-rounder exercise, form of exercise that everybody can do because everybody needs to walk.
Yeah.
But it just gets the whole body, the arms and the back. It helps your posture when you're walking. It's much more aerobic. So there's that I've been doing, and I also work between two clinics. One in Wilmslow in Cheshire, where I've been for the past 20 years, and more recently, I started a clinic up in Penwortham in Preston.
Wow. So you are a busy lady, aren't you?
I am
Lots and
busy.
lots.
And
Lots
add
going
4
on.
children into the mix as well, although
Oh.
they're older now and they're fleeing the nest. And
Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know. So interesting because I don't meet many osteopaths, and I think it's really interesting for us to talk on the podcast today and this thing about women's health and help us to have a better understanding really of our overall health in terms of our body. And what are some of the challenges really that you find when you're working with women, Julia? What are the most kind of common ailments that you come across?
well, as an osteopath, I deal mainly with problems arising from the musculoskeletal system, so spinal related pains. And it's often due not necessarily to debilitating conditions caused by dramatic events. It's more an insidious build-up of repetitive strains from things that we do every day, our work, our occupations around the home. And I typically work with women in their late 40s and 50s, mainly because I'm in my 50s myself, and I realise the sort of problems that develop around that stage. I mean, it's an age group where the structures of the spine start to lose their ability to withstand pressures and strains in the joints and discs. And this can cause pinched nerves or inflammation and pain. Coupled with the menopause, when there's starting to be a loss of collagen, which is the building blocks for cartilage, muscles and tendons. And that means that support around the joints reduces and increases the susceptibility to strain.
Really?
And also there's a reduction in bone density, so that increases vulnerability for fractures if you fall, but also minor stress fractures from heavy lifting and things like that. So I help women to take note of the problems that they're getting,
Yeah.
rather than dismissing it,
I
and
didn't
I
know
want
that
them to
about
feel supported.
collagen. Sorry,
Sorry.
Julia. I didn't know that about collagen. So obviously I'm aware of like the hormonal changes
Yeah.
around menopause, but I didn't know about the collagen. So they're kind of like, I suppose, is it flexibility and stretchiness of
Yes,
your bones can alter?
that's right. Yeah, it's sort of, if you like, part of the natural aging process. Unfortunately, this is what happens.
Mm.
And I think there can be this sort of feeling of, oh, well, it's inevitable. It's my age. It's not going to get any better. It's all sort of, well, this is the way it's going to be. And it doesn't have to be. I mean, we're often amazed when we see women in their 80s doing dancing,
Yeah,
like the Strictly Come Dancing,
yeah,
Angela Rippon, and
yes.
incredible
Doing the splits.
flexibility and
Yeah.
things like that. And we think, oh, well, there must be very, very few that can do that. And yes, there's some truth in that. But I think we can do more. We can reverse more than we think we can, or maintain more than we've got. And it doesn't have to be a slow, gradual, inevitable decline into stiffness and pain and immobility.
Oh, this is reassuring, Julia, because I'm about to hit 50 later this year. So I'm all ears, honestly. I'm like open like a sponge now to anything that you want to share. What are
Well,
some
then
of
you want
the
to make sure that you enjoy it, and it's embrace the opportunity. I mean, for a lot of women, it can be a time of life where, yes, their children are leaving the nest,
Mm.
and there may be more opportunities for them to do their own thing, and to grab what opportunity they can. Unfortunately, a lot with the going with the empty nesters, a
Mm.
lot can be older parents then
Yeah.
coming into the mix, and the needs for them are increasing. So it can always be a juggling act, and often women in their 50s, early 60s feel like though they're being pulled in all directions.
Yeah.
So finding a time or finding some routine for themselves and help along the way, then that's just to make sure that their own health isn't going to decline. Because if they fall, it's like a pack of cards. They fall, there's a lot of other things that can topple with them.
That's a great analogy, and you're right. You're right. Yeah, and sometimes we're holding all of that up, aren't we?
Mm.
What are some of the common ailments then that you see, from women in this kind of age bracket? I know you talked before because I've known you for a while now about back problems. But what else as well should we look out for?
Well, a lot of the problems are things that they may not feel they're bad enough, in inverted commas, to go and see their doctor or to even see another therapist. And it can be sort of just that they're not sleeping well, they can't get comfortable. They have a very busy day, whether it's work or looking after children or looking after elderly parents, full day of stuff. And then they go to bed and they just ready for, probably more than ready for it, and they just want to go to bed. And that's the time where these little niggly aches that they've been pushing down and ignoring all day come up to the fore. So it can interfere with that ability to relax and fall asleep. And then they may wake up in the night and then they can't get comfortable again and they're tossing and turning. So I've got tips that can help them get better sleep positions.
Brilliant.
And use of pillows and things between the knees to take the tension out of their hips and low back, and things they can do during the day. I mean, obviously they're tackling all these things as the day goes on. But for example, if they're working from home, home office, there are some very easy tips that might just make life a little bit more easy for them, so they don't have problems that will then keep them awake at night.
Wonderful. So, you're saying some of it's down to kind of posture and
Yes,
how we're sitting, how we're standing, these kind of things that we can work
yes,
on.
that's it. I mean, often we sort of sit on chairs and we just sort of sit for as long as we need to sit, but we don't really think about, well, how am I sitting? Am I actually using the chair? Am I getting support from that chair? And am I sitting too long? Get up and move around. A lot of people, if they're working at a desk, say at a laptop or a computer, they will sit there until whatever it is that they're doing is finished. And it will only have a break once the activity is done or the piece of work. But if they just stopped for a brief moment in time and just took a deep breath in and out, and then just sat back, use the chair, relax, close their eyes for just a few moments, and then roll their shoulders to move all that part of the back that's been forward like this with their arms on the keyboard, and just have that minor break, that momentary release of.
That feels so nice. I'm doing it with you,
Yeah,
Julia.
I know, it's something that sometimes your back makes you do that. You just think, it's when people go,
Yes.
and they just pause for a minute, and then it's almost like they're giving themselves a breather, literally a breather from whatever they're doing. But if you make a habit of that,
Yeah.
it might just mean that there's less strains that have increased
Yeah.
as your day's gone on,
That's
and that
great because I
cumulative
know
effect.
a while ago you helped me because I was struggling with my shoulder on my left hand side, and you came and looked at how I was sitting, and you tilted the seat of my chair for me, and honestly it's made such a difference. I always thought the seat of your chair had to be flat and that's how you sat, but
Well,
now that you've
yes,
tilted it forward, my feet are on the floor and I'm sitting more upright, and honestly it's made such a difference.
yes. I mean, a lot of people, especially through lockdown, had these sort of makeshift workstations from home with whatever was there, and a lot of it was sitting on a dining chair at the dining table or a kitchen breakfast bar or whatever. And the trouble is, most chairs are 90 degrees, but our spine needs to keep its small small curve in the lumbar part of the back, and the angle for the pelvis is all wrong on a 90-degree chair. And what really the seat base needs to be is slightly tilted downwards,
Yes.
not so much so you feel as though you're going to be, catapulted out of your chair.
No.
But I'm sitting on now. I'll just show you what I'm sitting on now, because I sit on it all the time, even in a chair that's sort of designed for an office.
And anybody
If
that's
I can show you
listening
the
to
camera
this
there, I don't know if you can
on the
see that.
podcast, I'm just saying, anybody that's listening to this on the podcast, you're going to have to go onto the YouTube channel and see these things now, so that you can
Oh yeah,
see the
I'll try and
demonstration.
explain this. Basically, it's
Yeah.
called a seat wedge, and
Mm.
it's a slimline seat wedge.
Yeah.
When you see these sort of things on Amazon or whatever, or you hear about seat wedges, there's another one here. This is not one I made earlier, but it's called an 11-degree wedge. So it's slightly thicker at the back, and the thicker part. The
Yeah.
thicker part goes to the back of the chair, so there's a slope down of your thighs towards your knee. And the slimline one doesn't give you quite so much of a lift, so it's a little bit more comfortable on backs that aren't used to it. But you can put them in the car, you can put them on a dining chair, and for the sake of about 20 odd pounds,
Yeah.
it can be just that little bit of help you can give yourself when you haven't got either the money or whatever to fork out on the latest marvelous office chair, but you can make the best of what you've got at home.
Brilliant. So if people were searching for that then, Julia, on
Yeah,
Amazon or whatever, would they just search for seat wedge?
just look for seat wedge,
Mm.
but make sure it's not an 11-degree wedge, I think, in
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah.
So if they look for slimline or
Yes.
car wedge,
Yes.
then you can use them in the car, because the trouble is with some of them, they're too high, and then they'll compromise the height you have while you're sitting in the car with the roof of the car. So
Brilliant, brilliant. That's great. Thank you. And you mentioned about sleeping as well. And
yeah.
obviously, like you say, with menopause, a lot of time we're hot, we're cold, we're flipping around. There's the
Oh
insomnia, there
yes.
isn't there, that wakes you up in the middle of the night. So we struggle to get comfortable. So any advice on that then? How can we help to be more comfortable, to sleep well?
I think if you're not sleeping well, then you don't sleep deeply enough, and therefore things like temperature changes or minor discomforts are more likely to sort of stir you and uh, you know bring you out of a deeper sleep. So I think that the important thing is to sort of start off well. Now, I'm not saying you rush around doing your emails and you're looking at your phone and everything like that before you go to bed. You want to have had the last hour before sleep winding down. Maybe stop watching the television, stop using your phone, have some music. So there's something nice and relaxing, but you don't have to visually take note of it. Just and have a hot bath or a nice
Ah,
shower before bed, just to sort of have that switch off time. I mean, as children, you have the bath before bed because you want them to sleep. Well, why not do it for ourselves? And if you can put a little bit of Epsom salts, the old-fashioned bath
oh,
crystals, in
right.
to your bath, then that's magnesium helps with a lot of conditions that can keep you awake, like restless legs and
Oh,
cramps.
okay.
It's a very good old remedy, which seems to have been lost along the way, although it is resurgence a little bit now, as people have realised that that was a very good thing to do. But also sort of how you sleep, the position you sleep in. Most people are side sleepers. They prefer to sleep on their side. And often they sort of curl up in that sort of fetal position.
Yeah.
But that's quite a tight and closed sort of position. You want to be actually to see if you can stretch out a little bit. So if you put a pillow between your knees
Mm.
and something underneath the foot of the leg that's uppermost, so that you lift the whole leg up a little bit. So
Oh,
it's like jacking it up
yeah,
like a car
yeah.
jack. It takes the tension off the muscles of the hip and the low back, and it might be a very good way of starting to relax your body so it can switch off a little bit. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute you're going to stay like that all night. Clearly, you're not. But if you start off well and you relax, you might go to sleep more quickly, and your need to turn and toss and turn maybe a little bit less, because you've really got the muscles to relax a little bit more.
That is so helpful. That's a great tip. It's almost like when ladies are pregnant, isn't it? And they have those
Yes.
special pillows, don't they, to get comfortable, to get themselves in the right position. So I guess it's doing that as well in later life to get your your legs and things in the right position.
Exactly. I mean, they market these things for pregnant women, and obviously it's very important for women to be so well supported, because their body's very vulnerable, especially in the last trimester of the pregnancy when ligaments are softening. So they do need support, but so do you all the time.
Yeah.
It's and the idea is maybe not to have something too big and cumbersome, because we say when you get hot at night, you don't want too much in the bed.
No, true.
But it's something small, even just a folded towel between your knees, and then something underneath your foot. Just
Nice.
give it a
Something
go. See if
comfortable.
it helps.
That's a good one. And I guess the third thing I was thinking, something around you were talking about not sitting at your desk too long, and you gave us some nice breathing exercises, which is good. But I sometimes wonder is something to do with stretching, or some kind of way to kind of activate your body during the day if you are sitting at the desk too long. Have you got any suggestions for that? How do we kind
Yes.
of stretch ourselves?
Well, I'll just take the upper body, because if we are working at a desk and our arms are forward and our head is looking forward all the time, then the neck muscles, the front of the neck muscles shorten. And then when we want to look up, it's almost though it's a struggle for the ones at the back,
Yeah.
because these ones have been in that shortened position, and the shortened muscles at the front of the chest as well. So it's really just a case of rolling your shoulders back and holding that
Ah,
squeeze between your shoulder blades for a few seconds before slowly letting it release and roll to that sort of default position of being slightly forward. So it's just rolling the shoulders back. And then I often give this one to patients because it's quite useful. Sometimes people feel the need to want to swing their arms round to sort of loosen up their shoulders. But if they do that, especially in an office environment, they'll end up sort of knocking off the mouse or knocking the monitor. So if they make what I call a little chicken wing, I'll just lower that. So if they put the tips of their fingertips, the tips of their fingers rather, on the top of their shoulder,
yeah.
and then imagine that their elbow is the point of a pen, and just start to draw a circle with their elbow, and make sure it goes, not don't do it too fully to go, just do a few sort of practice
Yeah.
rounds, and then sort of feel as though the elbow is being drawing a larger circle,
Oh,
and it's going further back. So don't twist your body with it, just sort of
no.
keep sort of seated forward, but just roll your elbow, and it just moves all those shoulder muscles and shoulder joints in exactly the same way as you would if your arm was extended, but with
Yes.
less risk.
Ah, that.
And also this shorter lever, that's a long lever. Having it outwards and straight is a long lever. Bent at the elbow is a short lever. It sort of halves the weight of the arm as well, so it's much easier to move. So people that have shoulder stiffness, back stiffness, neck stiffness, they'll find that much more easy to do and willing to do than with an extended arm. So that's just a tip of loosening up yourself while you're working away. It
That's
doesn't
great.
interfere too much with what you're doing. It's not going to delay you. You'll still get your emails out and your bits of work, but you need to look after yourself too. It's just being mindful of your posture and yourself, and putting yourself
So
first.
good. And I think these little activities are brilliant because sometimes it is hard to get out, isn't it? And it's like if you can't get out and do a long walk, or you can't get to the gym or for a swim, then there are still ways in which we can move our body. That's
Yes.
really helpful. Yeah, yeah. Oh, good. Thank you, Julia. So I guess my final thing is like just one piece of advice, really. If we're trying to look after ourselves as we get into later life, what's one thing that you would say above all else, do that?
Well, funnily enough, it's actually one thing that you probably wouldn't think I would say necessarily. We've been talking about sitting posture and things you can do to sit and little exercises. But one of the things that I think, well, I'm guilty of this, so I have to take this piece of advice myself, and it's drinking plenty of fluids.
Yeah.
Often we have a lot of aches and pains, and we always associate being dehydrated with that you develop a raging thirst.
Mm.
But for a lot of people, they don't. They're like camels. They don't. That's not the prime that pushes them forward to get hydrated. But stiffness, ache, crampy legs, that can be a sign of not having enough fluid. So I always make sure that there's a water bottle near me that I refill so that I know how much I can really sort of gauge how much I'm drinking, because I've been guilty of thinking I drink more than I do. And I'll make myself a cup of tea, and you take about 2 or 3 sips of it, and then you put it down, and then you forget about it. And then you go back later and it's cold, and I stick it in the microwave. And then I forget about it and it's sitting in the microwave. So it's that sort of cold tea effect. It's sort of, you think you're drinking more than you are. So if you've got some sort of barometer or sort of something you can measure, then yeah, drink that water and refill it straight away and sit it wherever you are. So your eyes will gloss over it and think, oh, and when you see it, take a sip, take a swig, and make sure that you have plenty of fluid.
Great advice. And I think there's always lots of advice in there about drinking water, but they don't always tell you the reason why. So I think that's helpful to know that if we're aching and if we're, feeling those aches and pains, just keeping ourselves hydrated can really help.
It can do, yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been really insightful to chat to you today, and I'm sure there's lots more you could tell us about as well. But if people want to get in touch with you, Julia, if they want to find out more about how they could work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I'm more than happy to speak to people, because I think it's only by letting them have an opportunity to let me know what's going on and to explain how their life is affecting the way they're holding themselves and things. So my telephone number is it's mobile number 07547 631 679. I do have a website. It's www.juliakinseyosteopathy.co.uk. And I do have an email. If people prefer to send an email, then it's inquiries@juliakinseyosteopathy.co.uk. And my clinic in Penwortham is 35 Priory Lane.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I will pop those details in the show notes as well, so that people can go and find those afterwards if they didn't have a pen handy to write them down.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are driving out this, so I'll pop them in there as well so people can find you. And I know you're on LinkedIn as well, aren't you? So people can find you on there. So I hope people reach out and connect, because with your expertise, there are lots of us that can really benefit from your help. And you never know when you might suddenly need your services. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Liz. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let us know. Please remember to like and share the podcast as well. And if you can, give us a rating. It really, really helps to spread the word for the podcast and make sure that other people hear it as well. If there are other topics you would like us to talk about, please let us know. And if you'd like to hear more from Julia about women's health, please let us know, and we may be able to tempt to come back again. So let us know. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.